right, next up, Clemson and Wake Forest. Good one in the ACC here. Very interesting matchup. We've got Clemson 7.5, 8-point road favorites here. 55.5 the total in this game. And when it comes to this Clemson team, look, against Louisiana Tech last week, didn't cover the number, believe it or not, against the Bulldogs last week for the Tigers. 48-20, 33.5-point home favorites. Actually didn't cover against Furman the week before. And the Georgia Tech game, 41-10. Don't forget, that was a pretty close game. And then there were, Georgia Tech got worn down as the game went on. I still think this Clemson offense has not been great to this point. They're only, 63rd in the country in total yards per game on offense, 76th passing yards per game, 58th rushing in terms of yards per game. I mean, those are middle of the pack to slightly below average numbers across the board for the Clemson offense. And when you factor in that they played Georgia Tech, horrible team, Furman, and Louisiana Tech in their first 3 games, that's even more troubling, those offensive statistics, because they really haven't played anyone phenomenal yet. Now you're playing a Wake Forest team that is going to be, I think, a bigger test for you. And look, to be laying points like this on the road, whether it's more than a touchdown or double digits, you got to be able to put the biscuit in the basket, so to speak. You got to be able to put points on the board. And I think when we see DJ Uiagalelei here for Clemson, he's still someone that's a work in progress. He is. I mean, I think he's not been as bad as he was last year, but it hasn't been that leaps and bounds improvement I was kind of hoping for. The numbers are decent. 64% completions, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, but a very weak 3-game slate to begin the season here. So keep that in mind. Now, the Clemson defense is good. That is the strength of the team. We all knew this would be a very good Clemson defense here, and it's going to be posing some trouble and some concerns here for Sam Hartman and a very explosive Wake Forest offense. We know they can move the football, no question about that. 37-36, a wild one last week against Liberty. I think they were victimized a little bit, Connor, by looking ahead to this game. I think they weren't exactly, sharp against Liberty, but they did what they had to do to escape with the win against the Flames in that one. The passing game was working for Sam Hartman, 325 passing yards. They didn't run the football worth a lick. And, that's something that you get concerned about. I mean, they could not run the football against Liberty. They're probably not going to be able to run it here against Clemson. So they got to do it all through the air, essentially. And so they better hope they get a good day through the air from Hartman. Keyshawn Williams is going to have a big game in the receiving game. Donovan Green as well, and those Wake receivers. I'm leaning toward Wake with the points here as a home underdog. I am. But I am concerned that they're one-dimensional because the run game hasn't exactly worked for Wake this year. When I look at their numbers, Wake, they're 98th in the country running the football, 128 rushing yards per game. A lot of their offense has been through the air. But Clemson's defense that's where they're weaker. They have been giving up some big plays in the secondary. I saw Parker McNeil for Louisiana Tech last week, Connor, hit a big 40-yard bomb down the field against Clemson. They have a secondary that's vulnerable a little bit. That's where you can do some damage against Clemson through the air. And obviously Wake, that's what their offense has been. It's been almost exclusively through the air. So I think there's things to like about Wake where they can keep this within a single score. And let's keep in mind last year when they played Clemson, these two teams, and Clemson took care of business 48-27. It was a rough game for Wake, but Wake had played in a bunch of barn burner games going into that one. Their defense struggled with Clemson, got shredded. That is a concern of mine. But I'm willing to consider Wake here. I haven't bet it yet. I'm still leaning Wake. I got to see more from Clemson's offense against a good team to be laying points like this. Total's going down. But it's tough. Clemson's not a team I'm in a rush to bet over with. Wake's kind of not a team I'm in a rush to bet under with. So tough call with the total. What do you think, Connor?
Let's touch on the total. That was a huge – Wake Forest was 9-1 going into that game last year at Clemson and lost. Yeah, this total going down, I think it's a Clemson. They're an under team. To me, it was last year. And I remember this game come in and went over. So maybe if this keeps creeping lower, then we could hit the over by game time. Man, Hartman's got to do it all, like you mentioned. G. Martinez, 36 yards last year. They haven't been able to run it. I think even Clemson against this Wake defense will be able to move it. And this offense isn't very good. And I think DJ's got a short leash here coming very soon. at the quarterback. We already mentioned that last week. I mean, as long as they keep winning, though, it's tough to yank him. But it could be soon. Hartman is the guy. Even Sims, that first game, you mentioned La Tech last week. Sims, they had a couple, nice pass plays, and he can't throw it well. That first week against Clemson, Georgia Tech even had a few downfield passes. So Clemson secondary a little leaky. I'm with you here. I lean Wake Forest as long as you get over the touchdown. I think they desperately want to, after last year's game, like you, maybe a little look ahead with Liberty in that shootout. So I lean to Wake Forest here early in the week with the points.
Yeah, it's a very interesting game. The one concern, too, I have about taking the points with Wake is I've seen Sam Hartman now against the absolute best defenses that he has played, that Wake Forest has played, and he's had some rough. I mean, the Clemson game last year, the Pitt game in the ACC championship last year, it fell apart for him in the second half. I mean, it just completely unraveled for Sam Hartman in the second half against Pittsburgh in the ACC title game last year against Kenny Pickett. Remember, that was the game Kenny Pickett did the fake slide, and then they decided, hey, we're going to outlaw that. You can't do that anymore, the fake slide as a quarterback. But, yeah, he struggled in the second half of that game last year. So that does concern me a bit about Sam Hartman's ability to navigate this Clemson defense on Saturday.